The other day, I had one of my normie friends invoke to me the the oft invoked by normies notion of Occam's razor, which is the idea that the simplest explanation is usually the one that has the best chance of being accurate. And my retort to him was what I'm about to summarize for you all here. And that is that I think Occam's razor is a good principle to use to try to look at things and figure things out. But I think it's wrong to put Occam's razor in a cultural vacuum. I think Occam's razor ought to be invoked or used, used as a tool of analysis in the context of a culture, and not just plucked out of the vacuum and used without any regard to, or without even thinking about, or without even considering the culture. And this is how one can look at something like the Trump assassination attempt, which I've talked about in prior videos and written about on my Substack page. One can talk about that and use Occam's razor to say that the notion that this was all a fluke is not, in fact, the simplest and most logical explanation, given the cultural context. Given the cultural context, which I don't need to repeat here, but let's just say, I'll just summarize it. I'll just say the cultural context being an extremely corrupt establishment that clearly wants its own people in power and clearly wants people who are not of its ilk to stay out of power by any means necessary. We see that happening with Trump, whether you like him or not. I'm not a Trump quote-unquote supporter, but I do see what coheres before my eyes, which is that they have done everything possible, and they'll probably continue to do everything in their power to keep him from power. And one of those weapons in their arsenal is, of course, actually killing the man. They're gunning for him in every way. So why not gun for him literally? Do they not have the capacity to do that? No. They clearly have the capacity to do that. Again, seen in the cultural context. So again, without going into the details of the matter, and this can be used with respect to other things, not just the Trump assassination attempt on July 13th. Maybe we'll have to talk about the one on July 13th, because maybe there'll be other attempts in the future. God forbid, but again, I would not put it past these people at all. So with all of that in mind, one needn't neglect the idea of Occam's razor. In fact, one can use Occam's razor, the principle of Occam's razor, and say what makes more sense given everything, given not just the ballistics and peculiarities of the event, and various things that have been discussed and rehashed ad infinitum already. And again, I don't need to repeat them here, but given all of that, what does Occam's razor really tell us when we put Occam's razor in the proper context of the culture, and don't just try to see it as an ahistorical notion that can just be plucked out of the ether and applied without reference to culture?